Let's turn to Hong Kong, where 逃犯条例 in Chinese, directly translated as the fugitive bill, has been announced as dead. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced an end to the bill and reiterated that there is no plan to restart the legislation.
I have almost immediately put a stop to the amendment exercise. But there are still lingering doubts about the government's sincerity, or worries whether the government will restart the process in the Legislative Council. So I reiterate here, there is no such plan. The bill is dead.
Well, the debate over the fugitive bill in the past few weeks in Hong Kong has led to further discussions on the one country, two systems, a fundamental state policy of China. So what's Hong Kong's future as a special administrative region of China? And how does the one country, two systems policy offer a resourceful case study on potentially a new formula of governance, given Hong Kong's example? Martin Jacques, author of the book When China Rules the World, a senior fellow at the Cambridge University, also shared his thoughts in an earlier interview with me. Take a look.
Well, first of all, I want to say that one country, two systems was a brilliant innovation by China and approach to the question of its relationship with Hong Kong. Secondly, I would say that it's also a very difficult challenge, because at the heart of it is an ambiguity. Do you mean which one, or if you mean both, which is primary, or how does it move, how does it shift around, how does it change over time? So it's not a simple edict. It's a very difficult philosophy, if you like, to follow.
The third thing, maybe it's a better word, sophisticated
what?
Philosophy.
Yeah, okay.
Not just necessarily difficult, but rather sophisticated. Take a lot of making sure all the moving parts are falling into the same right places.
It is very sophisticated because, and it comes from Chinese civilizational history. And China as a civilization state, this way of thinking. So that's what makes. I mean, a Western state would never think like that. One country, one system. That is the nation-state, Western nation-state way of thinking. But I think that the difficulty that the Chinese government faces now, and obviously the government in Hong Kong, is that it has to be able to win the trust of most of the Hong Kong people. I mean, you know, the violent people and so on are a small minority and to be condemned. But the large numbers of people, we have to win their hearts and minds.
Hong Kong, as you may know, Martin, has its own history for quite some time, and there are shakers and movers in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, there are aspirations of different groups in Hong Kong, and therefore, how to make sure to incorporate all of these different aspirations under the umbrella of one country, two system, while at the same time to make sure it is not just those that is already enjoying the best benefits and prosperity of Hong Kong, but also those ordinary people in Hong Kong. Their interest is being taken care of, and all of these things being done in a balanced way. It's quite a topic, I guess, for the SAR government. Any advice from now till near future?
This is a very serious problem you just touched on, which was that there's a lot of hypocrisy about what Hong Kong was like before the handover. This was a colonial society in which privileged a very small number of people who dominated the economy in an oligopolistic fashion, and above all the control of land, which is why prices are so high in Hong Kong, which has caused and continues to cause great resentment. So there's there are a lot of problems in Hong Kong which need to be tackled by the Hong Kong government of a social and economic kind, which are crying out for attention and have been crying out actually for quite a long time. It also has an impact on global thinking, and very importantly...
Global thinking about what?
About China. And this is very, very interesting in the Hong Kong question, because the difficulty that China is experiencing with Hong Kong is about a Chinese society which has grown up in Western ways and with Western norms and Western values. And therefore, it is a very interesting, I think it's a very interesting test and challenge for the Chinese leadership, because that is exactly increasingly what it's going to have to do in dealing with the Western world. How do we influence in a favourable way Western ways of thinking?
You also talk about the DNA of China in your book, When China Rules the World. In fact, when you were talking about When China Rules the World, the title, you did not mean throughout the book that China rules the world, but rather China, the nature of China, when China has the opportunity to be the largest economy in history or in the future. It's a different nature compared to what America is, at least in your eyes. So explain that very clearly to our audience, because a lot of people just look at the title of the book and say, oh, you see, he's already said China will rule the world.
Yeah,
and rule is a very different verb.
Yes, well, unfortunately, of course, the word rules in English doesn't translate into Chinese. You end up with a word like governs or controls or something like that, which is absolutely what I didn't mean. And in English, there's a phrase, people say, when I rule the world. It's a kind of literary, it's a literary expression about dreaming of a future sort of thing. So in English, it's interpreted in a very different way to the way it gets translated into Chinese. So it works in English and it doesn't work in Chinese.
It works in selling the books, but now people look at the title and think, oh, see, China will rule the world. But putting jokes aside, Martin, what is important is what's in the Chinese DNA. And therefore, will this China that we're talking about right here, People's Republic of China, be different in any way, in nature and in DNA, of personality, of the way of dealing with the rest of the world? And therefore, what would they mean for its approach to the rest of the world, particularly now, Martin?
I think this is a crucial question. And, as we've been discussing, this is the question which has risen to the top of not just China's agenda, but the global agenda. What is China going to be like as a great power? And I would argue very strongly that China is going to be a very different kind of great power to the United States or Britain before it.
Explain.
Well, China has never seen itself in an evangelizing, missionary, conquering manner, ever in its history. I mean, when you think of China, you don't think of the great battles that it's won. You don't think of its great military qualities. I'm not saying it couldn't have them, but that's not the way we remember China. Unlike, for example, the United States or many countries, which for the Americans, the military is really the most coveted form of power.
What do you mean? Give us some examples. Maybe some of the American viewers looking at this and say, that's not true.
America has used military power globally many times in many different countries. And this goes back deep into the heart of the formation of the United States, which, let's be frank about it, was based on violence. It was based on the theft of land in the first instance from the Native Americans, the Amerindians. So there's a long history, and then the expansion of the frontier westwards across the United States was, in no small measure, a military expansion, often being done, by cowboys and so on.
So your conclusion is?
My conclusion is that China will be a very different kind of great power to, for example, the United States or the UK, because China's main expressions of its power are going to be economic and cultural. Western tradition, it's been much more military and political.
Martin, we're running out of time for today, but 10th anniversary of this book, When China Rules the World, which have a big impact on many's understanding of China. Before we go, any final thought?
Well, yes. I mean, talking about anniversaries, we're coming up to the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. And what an extraordinary achievement this has been. When countries go into decline, it's extremely rare for them to reverse that decline and rise again. And China, since 1949, has probably defied history and defied gravitational pull in terms of decline, and has risen in a most extraordinary way. So I suggest that China maybe has 70 candles, but also one candle, because it is still so young and forward-looking in outlook.